That's got to keep it fresher, much fresher, I would think, your way of doing things.
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, you still have to
For you and the audience.
produce the goods on the night, and the danger is always you can play. If something has gone well a certain way, you just repeat that, and that's the danger. To really try and be creative each time is difficult actually, and risky. You know, there's a wonderful Dutch conductor, Hubert Sudan, who told me at the beginning of his conducting career he worked with a very famous violin soloist, and they played the Beethoven Violin Concerto. Then he worked with them again 20 years later, and it was the same. He played it exactly the same way, even 20 years on. And so that's scary. That's sad that it hasn't moved on. But no, it's better to try and be creative and take risks. I much prefer to take risks, even if some of them don't come off.
Speaking of moving on, what have you recorded anything recently? Have you had recording plans for the near future?
In fact, yes. The box set of all the Beethoven piano concertos with my orchestra, Camerata Ireland, I think it comes out in the States in the beginning of January. And then we're also going to do, Sony BMG are going to re-release, we're going to release a Rachmaninoff record, which hasn't been released, Rachmaninoff 103, that's going to be in April, with Svetlanov conducting. And they're going to re-release all my other repertoire, and we're going to make some new records with Sony BMG. So I'm very excited about that.
Did I read somewhere in your bio talking about after you get through with Beethoven, it's on to Mozart? Is that still in the works?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing Mozart concertos all the time. We're doing all the Mozart concertos in the Champs-Élysées Theatre in Paris and London, and we're doing it next year. We start in Madrid as well. So that is a big project for us. Recording them, I'd like to do it a couple more years before, so that we really feel that we make the interpretation our interpretation, and then go on. We're also into Haydn symphonies at the moment, and also we're into commissioning new works from young Irish composers. So it might be a mixture. There's also, we might do some stuff which is kind of elegant Celtic accents kind of music. I put elegant in there very much with a big E, and so because there are some wonderful composers around who can adapt. And it's funny, in Ireland with such a strong folk identity, that we haven't really had a Bartók or Kodály who's kind of assimilated the folk energy and the folk idiom into a, in inverted commas, classical idiom. And so I'm very keen to explore that with different composers to see what we can do to kind of not legitimise, because the traditional music in Ireland is very much legitimate, but to make a kind of a new accent in a more kind of formal way about where Ireland has come from culturally and musically, and so that's a project we're working on at the moment too.
Well, you mentioned your orchestra. How is life with the orchestra? Still going well? Still keeping you happy? Yeah,
it's expanding a lot. We have our festival every summer, but now we're going to have a whole series of mini festivals in Kildare, in a big chateau, a big stately home outside Dublin, Castletown House. We're also probably going to make some TV programs, and of course we expand our touring. We've got a tour of the States in March 2008, coast to coast, so we're very excited about that.
Still healthy? I mean, the orchestra still healthy and growing?
Oh yeah, it's growing all the time. Yeah, it's difficult to keep pace. But they're doing really well, and we're very excited.
Well, it sounds like you're happy with them, and I guess that counts too.
Yeah, well, when you get a bunch of friends together and you make music, it's just it's a delight, and it is a little bit like that, because these people, the whole reason behind Camerata Ireland was to get Irish people together who don't normally see each other, who are stuck in different orchestras around Europe or the world. So, like, we have a guest leader this time, Mairead McCran, who's the leader of the Austrian Radio Symphony Orchestra, and she's from Dublin, so she's going to come for the first time. She hasn't had a chance because she's so busy. So I want to bring all of these people together, and so there's a real atmosphere of friendship and camaraderie.
We play music. You were talking about the Irish composers and musicians. We play music on a CD that's on the Black Box label, and there are a number of Irish composers on there that I don't think anybody in this country are really familiar with. I wonder if you could fill us in, if at all possible, on a composer named Arthur Duff.
I don't know Arthur Duff. A lot of the composers we've been working with are the younger generation, people like Ian Wilson and John Buckley, Jane O'Leary, not quite the younger generation, but certainly middle kind of generation. She actually was born in Connecticut, but Irish parents, and she lives in Galway. So we've been very much trying to expand the repertoire of the younger ones and encourage the younger ones. So I got to do some Research on Arthur Duff.
Who's the female on that?
Trimble,
Yeah.
Oh yes, of course.
What's
Yeah.
her first name?
Joan.
Joan,
Joan Trimble.
yeah, well, she was wonderful.
And she was the one who had a piano duet with her sister. I believe.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes.
Well, what is the state of classical music in Ireland? I mean, you know, beyond this disc that we play, you know, it's not as familiar. A lot of composers write about Ireland or have written about Ireland, but what is the state of classical music? It has such a strong folk background, you know. But what is the state of classical music there?
It's very exciting at the moment. I mean, if you log on to this website, www.cmc.ie, it's a Contemporary Music Centre of Ireland, and I mean, the information there about what composers are doing, and the premieres and the performances they're having all over Europe, and some in the States. I know Donald Dennehy's had a lot of performances in the Chicago area, and I mean, they're really... It's... What I love is it's not trying to... notwithstanding what I said earlier on, they're not trying to be Irish. They're trying to be just make fantastic music. Some, of course, will adopt bring some of those kind of folk elements in, or some of the instruments like the boron or the pipes or something that will bring that into the mix. But they're not ashamed. They just want to make great music, and a lot of them are producing some beautiful things.
Well, speaking of contemporary music, do you think a lot of folks are scared of contemporary music because of what happened in the middle to late 20th century? Do you think contemporary music, or at least the classical music being written today, is speaking more towards the interests of the audience versus the interests of the composer and scholars?
I mean, there's still some kind of diehard revolutionaries around, but I mean, I think music has to make some impression on the audience. It has to express something. You know, it has to express emotion. Otherwise, what is it about? Of course, it must have form, and it must be kind of new. Otherwise, it just sounds like a derivation of something in the past. But at the same time, it must say something to the audience, and this is very, very important. Penderecki's music does. It really is very powerful music. I think, you know, we kill ourselves off sometimes by putting labels on it, whether it's classical, contemporary, you know, modern. Why don't we just say music? And I think it'd be easier. I mean, Penderecki his music it speaks to everybody in a real way, in a really profound way, and I think people will be very moved by this piece. So they shouldn't be put off by the fact that it's a premiere or the composer's still alive. You know, this is always something that puts people off. Why doesn't he die?
Alive and in the building.
But Penderecki is certainly very much alive and very much very relevant to us all, and you got to come and hear it. It's just great music.
Well, this day and age, speaking of relevance, you know, we keep hearing, and it's been interesting, you know, the naysayers saying that classical music is dying, but at the same time, I was reading an article, I think it was in Newsweek or Time magazine, that was talking about how classical music downloads surpass virtually all other downloads. That you know, that is where more and more people are being exposed to it in this media saturated world where people are carrying around, you know, 4,000 songs on a, you know, cigarette lighter sized machine. How do you think classical music, contemporary and otherwise, is fitting into this new media age?
I think you put your finger on it. I mean, classical music, art music, call it what you want, has to adapt to the times, and there's this exciting new technology. I mean, even in pop music, in rock music, you know, people would much prefer to spend $100, $200 on a concert ticket than spend $15 on a CD. I mean, why? Because they want the real experience. They want to be there. They want to feel it. The CD now is becoming irrelevant. The new way is, of course, to discover things is through the downloading, and that's wonderful. But there's a resurgence of people coming to concerts. People are really interested in the live events, and this is all across the board. The fact that the record industry is having to reinvent itself is a good thing. You know, it had to happen with 78s to LPs, LPs to CDs. The cassette is now completely gone. You know. That's good. Fine. You know, we all have GPSs in our cars now. I mean, who would have thought 10 years ago? It's exciting.